Now, on 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app. O'Connor and Company.
07 now. It's our fourth hour of 4 hours of radio that we deliver every morning here on O'Connor and Company. If you've missed our 5 a.m. hour, you're really missing out because that's when Bethany gets away with murder. Basically.
Bethany? You weird, creepy man?
Me?
I talked about how I'm studying the book of Joshua, okay?
Right.
You make weird innuendos the whole first hour.
Not about Joshua. That would be weird.
No, not about Joshua, about everything else, though.
Maybe Miriam. She was hot.
Oh, my God.
I like a girl with a tambourine.
I would like to distance myself from this show. During the commercial break, I scheduled part of March, and I uninvite myself.
So subscribe to the podcast so you can get that kind of banter.
For real.
And we get that podcast up before noon every day, right after this program goes off the air. So it'll get delivered to your device in a timely fashion.
That's
Bethany
to
Mandel.
Michael Shelton for making that happen.
I am Larry O'Connor, and joining us now is Jonathan Alexandre, Legislative Counsel for Maryland Family Institute, who we were trying to remember, Jonathan. I think we shared a table at a fundraiser in Anne Arundel County couple of years ago with Bethany Mandel. Good to talk with you. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, great to be on with you this morning.
So the Democrats have come up with a plan here in Annapolis. It's called the Keeping Charities Nonpartisan Act of 2026. And of course, if you're a charity and you've got a 501c3 status or what have you, you do not engage in partisan political activities. But something tells me, I could be wrong, it's just a hunch, the Democrats are trying to stretch the definition here of political activities for nonprofits. What's up here?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. They're going in the opposite direction of what the federal government, the IRS, is recognizing that charities, especially churches, have not just the right, but an obligation really to share with their family, share with their congregation their political views. And they can talk about candidates, they can talk about partisan elections, they can share in official publications how they feel about the things that concern their family when it comes to the upcoming political election. And Maryland is going in the complete opposite direction. It's a reactionary sort of knee-jerk. Even during the testimony, it was quite frankly an embarrassing testimony where the authors of the bill didn't know what was in the bill, didn't know the full implications of the bill. All they knew is that they wanted to keep churches and religious nonprofits silent, and they couldn't answer the technical details of the bill because it is such an aberration to what the First Amendment guarantees for churches.
So it's funny how it's just religious churches and religious nonprofits that they're concerned about, isn't it? And there's nothing wrong with a church or a pastor at a church saying, these issues are very important to us and our religious faith. We're not telling you how you should vote and certainly not telling you who you should vote for, but look at where the candidates stand on issue A, B, and C. I would think that that would be just fine, wouldn't it? Or would this now be prohibited?
Yeah, in Maryland, it would be prohibited. It stretches much further than what the Johnson Amendment ever intended. And the Johnson Amendment hasn't been applied. One of the questions that came up during the hearing from a friendly senator on this issue was, how many violations of the Johnson Amendment have been in Maryland? Well, absolutely zero. There's not a single recorded violation of the Johnson Amendment because it's a misapplied sort of provision of the IRS that they're already backing away from. Maryland decides to come in and not just implement this fraught amendment, but strengthen it in a manner that it targets religious churches to the point that it takes away their tax-exempt status for their parsonages, for their schools, for their property. I mean, it really is a sledgehammer coming after the speech of these churches.
So I see on your website that you have sort of some language that people should use to contact their representatives. Can you share with our listeners a little bit about how people can go about doing their civic duty for the day, especially if you have off today, you can do a public service? What should people do to contact their representatives if they live in Maryland?
Yeah, I think it's critical. So the Senate hearing was last week. The House hearing is coming up this Wednesday on the 18th. So they still have opportunity to sign up to be in Annapolis and just say, hey, basically this political speech, as you've coined it, the so-called partisan speech, is just the free sharing of ideas. It's the right to associate with 5 or 10 folks on a in a community church that believe the same way you do. And we're going to talk about all sorts of issues, and yes, including politics. And there's no way that the government should condition our tax-exempt status on our promise to be quiet about these issues. It's completely incompatible with free speech, with the religious exercise clause that we have in our Constitution, both in Maryland's Constitution and the U.S. Constitution, and frankly is the opposite direction from where even the federal government is going on this issue.
So what is the vote count currently on this provision? And by the way, are states allowed to do this, or is this really more of a federal issue? Is this a state concern? Are there any other states that have such a law?
Yeah, I've not seen another state go in such an aggressive fashion. I guess Maryland is counting itself as being, the full reactionary to the federal government. And so, yeah, is definitely opening up themselves as the state's attorney general, if he has to defend a passage of this law. Hopefully it won't pass, but if he has to defend this law, there'll be lawsuits brought by churches that are clearly saying, hey, there's 5 or 10 of us. There's maybe 30 of us on a Sunday morning that get together, and we do all sorts of things. We baptize kids. We have funerals. Politics is so low down on the totem pole in terms of our consideration, but we are still allowed to talk about it. And you cannot come in, police our sermons, police our publications, and condition our nonprofit status on our promise to be silent. So, yeah, certainly they're opening themselves up for a lawsuit. The state of Maryland is. One of the questions is how will you even know what's going on in a service? And they're going to rely on what, whistleblower complaints or going through and combing through sermons and listening to getting on the church's website. Like how would you even know what's going on within a church service?
Well, and here's what's frustrating, I think, to many voters when they hear something like this. I can drive down the main drag in my town and see where all the churches are, and over half of them are flying political flags supporting LGBTQ issues, or they have political statements out in front. Again, more left-leaning political statements. I don't think a election season goes by in the state of Maryland where politicians don't address the congregants from the pulpit in certain churches, certain self-styled churches that appeal to Democrats, especially black churches, by the way.
Yeah, you're thinking of like a Jamal Bryant, who I guess makes his entire living, or Al Sharpton makes their entire living going after administrations that they don't like. Yeah, it is so hypocritical in the way that they want to apply it. They're targeting a particular type of church that they disagree with their politics, and it's a threat. It's just saying, hey, you got to be quiet. We're going to be watching you, which is not what the government should be involved in at all.
Yeah, I'm looking at a press release from Wes Moore's campaign in 2022. Faith leaders from across Maryland endorse Wes Moore for Maryland governor. I'm sorry, how do these faith leaders do this exactly and still steer clear of this kind of law that they're trying to pass?
It's exactly right, and that's why the law is just a threat, right? The federal government is backing away from it. Maryland is going in the complete opposite direction. And really, if you think about it, it is such an insecure amendment. Like, you think politicians, and partisan politics are so important that you have to police what people say about you. Like, oh, you can talk about everything else, just don't talk about don't talk about my election. It's such a insecure amendment, and this law that's following the trend here in Maryland is equally insecure, equally unconstitutional.
Well, Marylanders, you need to let your state senators and your delegates know about this. Oppose SB 4. Number 4, boy, they really put it high on the list, didn't they, Jonathan?
Yeah, pretty early on.
If you want more information, you can also check out the website from Maryland Family Institute. Just get all the details there as well. We got to stop this in its tracks. Thank you, Jonathan. Appreciate it.
Have a great rest of your morning.
By the way, Meredith Dake O'Connor, the first lady of O'Connor and Company, she suggested this topic for us because it was on her radar. Well, she's very much involved with the Southern Baptist Church of Maryland, the state organization. It was I wouldn't go. Please, no. Good Lord. It's 8:15. So the Munich Security Conference happened over the weekend, and we've got some highlights and some lowlights. Can we start with Hillary Clinton? Hillary Clinton moderated a panel on women's rights in Germany because, women's rights are human rights, Bethany Mandel. Did you get that memo?
I did get that memo. So of all the people I'm going to take advice from about being a woman, it's not going to be Hillary Clinton. Weirdly enough.
I think there's someone even higher on the list of who you shouldn't take advice about being a woman and women's rights, and that would be a person who pretends to be a woman but isn't actually a woman. Take a listen to this panel where the very first person to speak on this women's rights panel in Germany is a woman with male genitalia. The Congress critter Sarah McBride. Here, take a listen.
Someone who's been involved in this work for a long time in trying to explain and truly bring people together around issues of gender, and that's Sarah McBride, U.S. Congresswoman from the state of Delaware.
It's not all the us.
You know, as a gender rights champion, and also the first openly transgender member of the United States Congress. You've been on the front line.
By the way, Hillary Clinton sounds more masculine than Sarah McBride, which is saying something. But I'm not a woman. I don't think I'm allowed to comment too vociferously on this. Otherwise, I'll get canceled. So, Bethany, isn't it a little discordant and maybe sort of objectionable to immediately turn to somebody who is a
man?
A man. Yeah, that's the word I'm looking for.
It's fine.
And celebrate. I mean, that's where women's rights are now. I guess women's rights internationally are in such great shape that the biggest problem is making sure that women who aren't actually women have rights as women.
So I guess that women's rights have just been completed. We're done. We don't need to do anything else, and so now we have to spend all of our effort giving our energy to the men to allow them into our bathrooms, into our locker rooms, into our changing areas, because nothing says women's rights quite like allowing men into our private spaces.
Yeah, there you go. So
what a betrayal.
That's just the beginning of the atrocities there in Munich. Just wait till we get to Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and Gretchen Whitmer. But let's first turn to our EPA director, Lee Zeldin, ABA administrator, who was, this Dasha Burns thing. I don't quite get the whole Dasha Burns phenomenon other than that she's got slicked back blonde hair, so people seem to think that's cool. But she's the podcaster for Politico, and she tried to pick a fight with Lee Zeldin over greenhouse gas emissions and the authoritarian move of the Trump administration to remove Obama's authoritarian regulations. And Lee Zeldin was having none of it. Take a listen.
Mr. Zeldin, with all due respect,
Sure.
Isn't it just a little bit cute for the administration to now be saying we want to leave the power with Congress when there have been so many examples of this administration pushing the boundaries of executive power and court power and the law in general?
So I shouldn't follow the law.
I'm saying that there are many examples of this administration in gray areas of the law.
But you're asking me about the endangerment finding, and I'm sitting here as the EPA administrator, and I'm happy to answer any question that you have. I committed when I was going through the confirmation process that I'm going to follow the law. And there's no way that I'm going to sit here and have any apology or regret for applying the best reading of a law and reading a Supreme Court decision that makes it clear that if you're going to regulate the heck out of greenhouse gas emissions with trillions of dollars of regulatory costs on Americans, that's something that Congress should have a debate and a vote on. And every time you see any
Lee
member of
Zeldin
Congress
is
who wants
so very impressive, and I'm sorry, Dasha Burns is way out of her. With all due respect, isn't it a little too cute to now say, wait, what's this whole gray area with the law? We have a Supreme Court, we have appeals courts, and Trump's got a pretty good record here with all of the judges that have tried to block his actions of actually being well within the confines of the executive powers.
And I just have to say, I just have to defend Lee Zeldin because I've become a fangirl of Lee Zeldin ever since he got rid of the stop-start feature in all of this. With all of this action, what he's done is freed future cars from mechanical failure, like mine experiences all the time, because of this stupid button that I forget to press every time I get in my car. I never thought I would stand for the EPA director, okay? Like, that's kind of a consolation prize for a lot of people, but Lee Zeldin is killing it.
Yeah,
right
Lee
now.
Zeldin's a mensch. By the way, speaking of menches, and which, by the way, means, just a great dude overall, Sarah McBride did want to lecture women about how important trans rights are to the women's movement. Here, quickly.
There is no question in the United States that after decades of historic progress on gender equality writ large, and specifically more recently on LGBTQ rights, that we are facing, as you mentioned, a well-organized, well-funded, right-wing regressive movement.
Oh, regressive. Please,
they really
please, the well-funded. Take a look at Human Rights Campaign for a moment and all the money coming out of Hollywood for transgender issues. Don't start with me on well-funded.
By the way, in the wake of all of the transgender shootings, including the recent one in Canada, this is the rhetoric that radicalizes transgender shooters. This, we're under siege, we're being attacked, and they feel like they have to take up arms to defend themselves. There is a straight line. There's a straight line.
All right, coming up, the triumph of Marco Rubio in Munich and the Hindenburg crashing into the Titanic at Chernobyl that was Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez in Munich, all coming up. It's 8:24.
Now, on 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app, O'Connor and Company.
The Secretary of State Marco Rubio, 1 year after J.D. Vance gave a stunning and powerful speech to the Munich Security Conference that left, some European leaders stunned. Some of them even openly booed J.D. Vance for asserting American priorities and, frankly, scolding European leaders for acquiescing on issues like free speech and religious freedom. Secretary Rubio, with a more velvet-gloved approach, said basically the same thing, and he got a standing ovation. Cut 23.
For we in America have no interest in being polite and orderly caretakers of the West's managed decline. We do not seek to separate, but to revitalize an old friendship and renew the greatest civilization in human history. What we want is a reinvigorated alliance that recognizes that what has ailed our societies is not just a set of bad policies, but a malaise of hopelessness and complacency. An alliance the alliance that we want is one that is not paralyzed into inaction by fear. Fear of climate change, fear of war, fear of technology. Instead, we want an alliance that boldly races into the future.
J.D. Vance, by the way, as I just mentioned, highlighted this speech on his social media account and said it was a great speech, worth watching the whole thing. Mark Hemingway's response said it was hard-nosed Trump foreign policy delivered with Reagan's confidence and optimism. And I'll tell you how good it was, Bethany Mandel. There was just one mention of it on the Sunday shows, according to Media Research Center.
That's how good it was.
Face the Nation spent about 35 seconds talking about it, and that was it. You'll remember that same Face the Nation actually talked about J.D. Vance's speech and grilled Marco Rubio about it for weeks after the Vance speech, but this one they tried to ignore.
Yeah, that's how you know. I think that my favorite part about it was when he talked about, and this is maybe a weird thing for me to love as a Jew, but he said, we are part of one civilization, Western civilization. We are bound to one another by the deepest bonds that nations can share, forged by centuries of shared history, Christian faith, culture, heritage, language, and ancestry. He is saying this to a Europe that is slipping away. And I think that everyone sitting there is watching it slip through their fingers.
Yep.
I want to just quote the New York Times reporting on it because I thought that was really instructive of how they viewed it. Marco Rubio, the Secretary of State, stressed Christian and cultural ties between Europe and the U.S. in his speech in Munich, but that excludes large parts of Europe's population. Yes. That's the problem, guys, that Europe is being lost by the fact that no one's having babies anymore, and also that they're importing a culture that is completely alien to the whole history of Western civilization.
Right. That European population that New York Times is lamenting that wasn't included in the remarks a decade ago was not part of the European population. They're all kind of newcomers there, and that's part of the issue. Rubio also talked about the U.S. mindset in the post-World War II world. It's a very interesting insight. Take a listen to this path he lays for us.
That every nation would now be a liberal democracy, that the ties formed by trade and by commerce alone would now replace nationhood, that the rules-based global order, an overused term, would now replace the national interest, and that we would now live in a world without borders where everyone became a citizen of the world. This was a foolish idea that ignored both human nature and it ignored the lessons of over 5,000 years of recorded human history. Mm-hmm. And it has cost us dearly.
Yep.
In this delusion, we embraced a dogmatic vision of free and unfettered trade, even as some nations protected their economies and subsidized their companies to systematically undercut ours.
Yeah.
Shuttering our plants.
It's so important that it was like, we are more than just free markets.
Yep,
and it's an incredibly important message.
I want to tag on to what he just read and quote Marco Rubio after we've just played that very long clip, because I think this is really important. For we in America have no interest in being polite and orderly caretakers of the West's managed decline.
Yes.
This is a fight for the West. And this is why maybe it's weird for me as a Jew to be saying, cheering him defending the Christian faith, but this is a fight for the West. It is Judeo-Christian values with the understanding that we live in a Christian nation and it has to remain a Christian nation. We have to have people of faith. The faith is Christianity, with religious freedom for the rest of us, the Jews, the Muslims, whatever. But we have to keep the core identity of the West intact, or we will, the decline. This is it. This is the end of the West.
I'm right there with you.
This is him screaming into the void in Europe, and I just hope that they listen to him.
Well, here's who really didn't like it. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez.
Oh, that's how you know.
She specifically spoke about what Rubio had to say on behalf of the Trump administration and on behalf of you, Bethany, who want to celebrate the Christian culture of the West and how vital it is. Take a listen to cut 30 here.
You are starting to see the ascent of the right, even in places like Munich. Marco Rubio's speech was a pure appeal to Western culture.
Thank you.
My favorite part was when he said that American cowboys came from Spain.
I thought they came from Winnetou, but
I believe the Mexicans and descendants of African enslaved peoples would like to have a word on that.
I would like them to have a word.
No, they literally did, in fact. Where do you think the Mexican cowboys came? The vaqueros came from...
This is the failure of education, Larry.
Next, you're going to tell me horses were in Arabia or something.
I mean, this is, they want us to be stupid and they want to keep our children stupid.
Yes.
This is why I was just looking up our local elementary school's test scores because I was trying to talk someone out of sending their child there.
Yeah.
15% of the entire elementary school is on level. That's by design. That's not an accident. They want to keep us as stupid as AOC so that you don't know anything.
It is AOC was such a clown. It's we know she's a Marxist, but I didn't know it was, Harpo Marx.
Right.
Karl Marx. We'll get into her babbling absolute disaster of an answer to a very simple question: should the West defend Taiwan? You'd think that as a congresswoman for several years now, almost a decade, she'd have a good answer. You'd think wrong. You'll hear it in a moment.
Would and should the U.S. actually commit U.S. troops to defend Taiwan if China were to move?
I think that this is such a, I think that this is a, this is of course a very longstanding policy of the United States. And I think what we are hoping for is that we want to make sure that we never get to that point. And we want to make sure that we are moving in all of our economic research and our global positions to avoid any such confrontation and for that question to even arise.
Honestly, that's just not good. This was supposed to be AOC's big coming out as a powerful voice on the international stage, and that was just an unmitigated disaster. Gavin Newsom, also embarrassing. He went to Germany and compared ICE, American law enforcement, to Nazi stormtroopers in Germany. Not a great look for the California governor. And meanwhile, Gretchen Whitmer, again, all these Democrats are trying to audition for the national ticket and show their international cred. Here's Gretchen Whitmer asked a question on a panel. Matt Whitaker, by the way, the ambassador to NATO, was also on this panel. Oh, I don't have the audio loading right now. Darn it. Gretchen Whitmer basically said, oh, gosh, I don't know. I defer to the ambassador to answer that question. But I don't know. Bethany, I know I'm a homer here. I know I'm rude, but it was like Marco Rubio and the Seven Dwarfs over there. It wasn't even close.
Yeah, no, it doesn't. Honestly, it doesn't even seem fair to anyone else, us included. Like, we're here having to talk about this incredible speech. I mean, this was truly one for the ages, and I'm so scared for Europe's future. And you know, he spoke so beautifully about. Europe is where the ideas that planted the seeds of liberty, Mozart and Beethoven and Dante and Shakespeare, and Michelangelo and Da Vinci, the Beatles and the Rolling Stones. And the only people learning about this stuff now are the homeschoolers and the private school kids.
Yeah.
It is.
The future is ours.
Yeah, it's true. But it's just, this feels like maybe it was too late, but, he shot his shot.
So, specifically with Marco Rubio and last year J.D. Vance, and just sort of where these two are right now is obviously the top choices for the Republican ticket. If the American people vote for foreign policy and national security, it's not even close. The question is, do the American people vote for foreign policy and national security?
But I don't think that that's the choice here. I like J.D. Vance. I think he's fine, but Marco Rubio doesn't just represent foreign policy. He is speaking here about the future of America. And something that I've defended a lot on this show is the actions that we're taking in Greenland. That is forward-thinking, defensive of the America 250 years in the future. This speech is trying to ensure that we have a 500th anniversary. And I think that Marco's speech here really exemplifies the fact that he is thinking that far ahead and thinking 250 years back, but 250 years ahead. I don't see those signals from J.D. Vance in the same way.
Well, I don't see those signals certainly from anyone on the Democrat side of the equation.
Well, yeah.
Crazy. 8:53.